Hey y'all, this is Julie at Chicks Quilting, and I'm here today to do a video to help you solve a problem that happens more times than we like to admit. So every now and then we get a quilt that either the backing has been measured wrong, or I have seen them pre-wash their backing before we load it on the quilt, so we're thinking we have 108 inches to deal with, but we really don't because it shrank. We've had customers that have pieced backs that end up being not big enough. And so we run into this problem occasionally. I've run into it myself personally just because I flipped my backing the wrong direction when I loaded it on the frame when I had a quilt that was looked pretty square. So what that problem is your backing sometimes ends up, you get down to the bottom of your quilt and you don't have enough backing to finish your quilt. So there is a way to fix that, and I'm going to show you how, right on the frame. So the first thing you want to look at is how much fabric am I going to need? Typically, it's not very much. You're dealing with an inch or two that you're short. I like to take up, especially if I don't have the matching fabric, I want to take up a few more inches, cut off a few more inches, just so that I give myself a bigger space instead of having that seam right in my binding or right on my binding. So I'm going to, in this case, I have matching fabric, so it doesn't bother me. I'm going to go ahead and add to that backing. So the first thing you want to do is flip up your top out of your way so you can see what you're dealing with. Now, I'm not going to unpin anything. I'm going to work with it right on my frame. So I have another piece of fabric that matches my backing. Sometimes we've had to piece this together. We have occasionally had to cut off of the side of our already quilted area of that quilt and piece a piece together that matches that backing. Sometimes it's like building a puzzle. So what we're going to do is we are going to make sure we have a piece that is as wide as we need and as long as we need. So right now I have an extra piece that's going to give me plenty of space because I only need it a few inches. This is going to go underneath our frame, right sides together. And I'm going to, well, first of all, I almost forgot the very important part. We are going to stitch a plumb line. So we want to go below where we need it, and we want to stitch, using our channel locks, a straight line. So I'm going to turn my horizontal channel lock on. Now I have it on the Pro Stitcher. If you have the plastic ring channel lock, you can use that however your machine locks the wheels to keep it going in a straight horizontal line. I should have used a thread that was darker so you guys could see. I'm going to stitch that line straight across. Okay, now that I have that line, I know where to line my fabric up to. So I move my machine back out of the way, and I'm going to take my extra piece of fabric. Make sure you have a good straight edge. I say that because when you're going to be lining this underneath, and you're going to be lining this up with this good straight line. So if you have a crazy edge, make sure you have your the straightest edge on there, or straighten it up. So I'm going to turn it where it's right sides together, because you have your right side of your backing facing down. So this extra piece is the right side facing your backing. I'm going to take that and I'm going to line up on that stitch line. Now you'll have to use your fingers to kind of feel and get it as close to that stitch line as you can. But if it overlaps it a little bit, I'm okay with that because I have plenty of extra fabric here. So I'm just going to pin this up the side and secure it to this one side of my quilt for now. And then I'm going to attach my clamps to it just to kind of give it a little more stability. Now I'm going to take, making sure that this fabric is on my machine bed. I want to get it up there to where it's not, it's flat on my machine bed. My machine can travel. And I'm just going to feel as I go down to make sure that that fabric is at least on that stitch line, preferably just a tad bit over. And I'm going to put some pins in here. All the way down. And I can feel this and feel that I'm going pretty straight. I can feel exactly where it's overlapping that stitch line. And I can keep it really, really straight. Now, the more pins you put in here, remember the better it's going to keep this secured. And but you do have to remember, I'll move my pin cushion so it's easier to get to. You do have to remember that you need to take all these pins out later. So kind of keep track of where all you're putting them. And I know that this is a little bit of work, but believe me, it's a whole lot easier than taking that quilt totally off the frame, fixing your problem, and then getting it all lined back up, especially when you're working with the Pro Stitcher or the computerized quilting, because it's not as easy to get it back on that frame as straight as you had it the first time. Uh-oh. A magnetic pincushion like to travel around. Now making sure that this is staying good and flat underneath. Now I'm going to attach it to this side, making sure that I'm pulling as much slack out of it as I can. You can also go up here in the center and like pin to where you're keeping that from draping, because you don't want it to get tangled up with your machine. So I am just going to kind of roll my quilt back so that I can see where I'm at. And I'm pinning that right on top of my quilt to keep that in place. Now I'm going to attach these clamps. Again, that gives it more stability. So while you're working with it, it's not moving on you. So our next step is we are going to stitch a straight line, again, using our horizontal channel locks, right above where this stitch line was before. So we want to have a good 1/2 inch seam allowance. My scissors are in the way over here and won't let my machine go. We want to have a good 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to start about a foot's width away from that. I have my spoon foot on, so I'm going to go kind of measure my foot right here away from that stitch line, drop my needle, pull my bobbin thread up, and I'm going to turn my channel locks on and stitch that line. Now, here's the key. You don't want to run over any pins. That would cause an ugly event. So do not run over your pins. Take your time. Once you get a little bit further down the quilt, you won't have to hold the end. And just make sure when you get to that pin, and I am on the education frame, so it's smaller. Your frame's going to be easier to work with. I'm just going to stick my pins right there for now. Now, every now and then I want to stick my hand under here and just make sure everything's still good. I want to get down here to the end. You don't necessarily have to go all the way to the end, but you want to kind of do a little back stitch to secure it. I'm going to come back and pull my bobbin thread up, cut my thread, and again move my machine out of my way so that I can make sure that I have all these pins picked up. Whoops. Okay, so I'm going to double check to make sure I have all of these pins that I just pulled out off the quilt and back on my pin cushion, because we don't want to have any issues. Now I'm leaving everything else the way it is for now. I'm going to feel under here. I'm going to make sure that that is secured in there and I have plenty left for my seam. Then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut right above that. This is the line I stitched to attach that extra backing. This was my plumb line. I'm going to cut right on that plumb line stitch line. And that'll give me a good 1/2 inch seam, okay? So just, I'm cutting right on the edge of it so this, it's straight, but yet it's going to give me an open seam. Okay, so now we can take off our extra pins here. And see that now we have plenty of backing to finish our quilt. So that is, that's how to add the backing. Now, next step is going to be, let's remove this little piece right here and get ready to reattach our new backing and get ready to quilt again. Okay. I'm dropping pins everywhere, but that's okay. So now I'm going to, so you could, you know, go back and find your center just like you would originally attach your backing. I'm going to feed my backing back through here, give myself a little bit of slack. And I'm going to pull it to where I can kind of eyeball it. Because this is a small quilt. Now, if this was a large quilt, you may want to make sure you have that center attached, right? But I'm going to just kind of eyeball it and take my leader and reattach the bottom of my quilt. I'm not going to put as many pins as I would typically, because just to save time, you get the idea. You know how you're supposed to have your pins closer together, but mine's just for demonstration purposes. So I'm not going to have mine totally pinned. And this isn't a real quilt either, by the way. This was just a little sample piece that we had doing something on the machine. So in a class, I'm using as a demonstration, because it never fails when this happens is at a time that's pretty inconvenient to do a video. So we had to create the problem for you guys. Okay, now that I have reattached my backing to my leader, I'm going to put one more pin here. I am going to roll the remainder up on my bar, lock it down. I'm going to pull back my quilt top, and I'm going to see that I have my seam here. Now this seam needs to be pressed open. Several things you can do. You can use a cordless iron. You can get your iron good and hot if it's one that plugs into the wall. You don't have to get an extension cord. It's not going to take you that long, but get your cordless iron or your iron, hold a wool mat underneath here, and just run that down the seam here. Press it open really good. You want to, maybe a little travel iron would be fine, but you do want to press this seam open. I highly suggest that. Then you're going to put your quilt top back over the top and continue quilting just as you would if you hadn't have run out of back. Attach your clamps back. Now in this instance, we couldn't get all the way to the side on this, but that's because our frame is short. Typically, you would definitely want to go all the way to the edge. But anyway, that is how you can extend your backing to be long enough to finish your quilt when you run out. So I hope you guys, this helped y'all. And if you have any questions, never hesitate to give us a call. Be sure and watch our YouTube channel for more tips and tricks on long arm quilting, plus lots of other things. So this is Julie. Y'all have a great rest of your day. Bye.